Shabbat Shalom. So I learned a new word recently. Following his visit to us over Slichot, I started reading the book by our colleague and friend of the congregation, Rabbi Dr. Michael Mama, entitled Living the Letters. Each chapter is based on a different Hebrew letter of the alphabet, together with a Hebrew word that starts with that letter and which represents to Rabbi Mama a Jewish idea or thought or value that he adheres to in his Jewish practice today. The word for Aleph, the first letter, was aspaklaria. We'll say that a lot. It's okay. It'll get stuck in your head. So best translated as a lens or a mirror or a screen of some sort, Rabbi Mama teaches that this term, aspaklaria, is used in rabbinic literature to distinguish between the prophecy of Moses on one hand and those of the prophets on the other, the rest of the prophets. For the rabbis, it's obvious that Moses saw through an aspaklaria that was shiny and clear and pure, whilst the prophets saw through multiple aspaklariot, which, in the eyes of the rabbis, dulled and clouded their vision. Whilst our sages tended to privilege Moses' single aspaklaria over the multiplicity of the prophets, Rabbi Mama admits that he's not so sure. According to his reading, there are two types of visions outlined, which are, to quote, the unifocal and the multifocal, the all and the each. One approach offers immediacy and clarity, the other nuance and depth, end quote. Mama, building on the ideals of the biblical prophets and by generations of rabbis and sages and even therapists and philosophers, suggests a new approach. That lens can be layered upon lens, and the optimal combination of lenses allows for us to see with the best vision. As I was reading this chapter, I could not help but to think, is that not what this time on our Jewish calendar, and especially this Shabbat Shuvah, this Shabbat of return, is all about? Seeing ourselves and seeing the world around us with the best vision possible? So put differently, in the next few minutes, let us consider Teshuvah itself as an aspaklaria. And I'll add, as Rabbi Splansky also alluded to, given everything that we'll acknowledge has transpired in this last week on our Jewish calendar and on the world stage, this particular aspaklaria might be more poignant than ever. So as Rabbi Mama notes, two of our preeminent medieval sages, Rashi and Maimonides, translate aspaklaria to mean a barrier. They see this barrier as the screen that separates the human from the divine. Moses' clear prophecy, however, is the pinnacle of perfection, whereby almost nothing separates Moses or his insights to achieving closeness to or understanding of God and what God wants from us. Every strong foundation and every perspective through which we see the world necessarily involves boundaries and blind spots. Every so often, they even render us myopic and renders the other, whatever that might be, invisible. However, the trick as part of a process of teshuvah would be to aspire to an aspaklaria at its finest, as described by Rabbi Mama, a balance between our own unique path of fulfillment and appreciation for universal concerns, to flip that lens, that aspaklaria, just a little bit more outwards without losing sight of ourselves entirely. In that vein, another translation of aspaklaria that Rabbi Mama brings is that of a mirror, reflecting back to the viewer a version of themselves. And again, doesn't that sound familiar right now? Mama points out that in the Mishnah, specifically in Tractate Kelim, the aspaklaria refers to a glass mirror that someone might use to look at their face, and it might be worth noting that Kelim means instruments or tools. A glass mirror we might or might not know, comprises a combination of transparent and reflective pieces, different kinds of asperclaria. We might take the mirror to be a symbol of vanity, Rabbi Mama knows well, meaning we think we're looking out at the universe, but really we're simply looking back at a reflection of ourselves. However, he feels that the mirror can also be representative of a gateway to self-reflection and self-understanding, again, a familiar trope at this time of year. Whilst none of us is as objective as we'd like to think, reflectiveness, attentiveness, and self-awareness can be, according to Mama, invaluable tools to perception, and we might add, invaluable tools for teshuvah. Knowing that we are limited, knowing that we are human, but being empowered to see the world through multiple asperclariot rather than our singular asperclaria might make us more willing and able to empathize with others, those we love, those we oppose, and even those that we might not have met yet. However, this ability to expand, to change, or see through our various asperclariot from anew takes an enormous amount of spiritual and emotional courage. To elaborate, we can turn to a different source, one that I love, which is Rabbi Alan Liu's renowned book about the High Holy Days, This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared. He teaches that this courage arises from the complexity of what it means to change. Transformation, he writes, does not have a beginning, middle, or end. It is always going on. Teshuvah seems to proceed in a circular motion. Every step away is also a step towards home. Rabbi Liu also notes that it is never quite clear where or when or if this transformation has borne fruit. Real transformation, he suggests, usually takes place in the realm of spiritual practice. Spectacular, immediate results, changes that we feel or see right away, are more often than not purely superficial. Real, profound transformation, well, that takes good time to manifest. Rabbi Liu then turns to the words that we will hear chanted in just a few days on Yom Kippur morning, which come from Parashat Nitzavim, found towards the end of the book of Deuteronomy. Lo niflati mimech v'lo rechoka hi, because this commandment to do teshuvah is not too wondrous for you, and it is not too distant from you either. Lo bashamayim hi v'lo me'ever leyam, it is not in the heavens, and it is not beyond the sea. This word is very near to you and in your mouth and in your heart, so you can do it. A shift in asperclaria, which we are calling teshuvah, thus begins with a turn away from the external world and into the internal world of the heart. This is courageous too. What if we don't like what we find inside? What if it makes us anxious or scared? The contents of our hearts, Liu writes, may be to us an open secret, but it can be extremely confronting when we're forced to sit with those secrets, those hidden thoughts, to be silent with them, even for a little while. Yet the heart is a mysterious and complex thing. Just like that mirror, we are forced to turn our attention to it regardless, Rabbi Liu posits. Often when we find ourselves in practices that require us to be quiet of mind, like prayer, for example, our attention is often taken away and the heart unwittingly discloses the deepest of our feelings and our impulses. In other words, our hearts become truly opened to a myriad of asperclariot that exist within us and potentially that exist in the world around us. Teshuvah inches us closer and closer to truth and to reality. For ultimately, to bring us back to Rabbi Mama, when we are able to look at our surroundings through the lens of another, and when we know the heart of our own asperclariot with all their doubts and their revelations, we can be brought to moral clarity and to empathy. Then we can perhaps see further than we've ever known, further than we ever could alone, and we can know ourselves better than we did before. And is that not teshuvah in the truest sense? So as we conclude, this is my prayer for us on this Shabbat Shuvah, our first Shabbat of 5786, that the asperclaria of teshuvah may be one of transformation for us, that it may be for us a mirror, not an obstruction, that it may lead to wider hearts and deeper self-reflection and self-understanding, that it may bring us closer to that source of truth we call God, that it may be for us the source of a kinder, more compassionate world, which we, God willing, will experience in turn. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Shabbat Shalom and Gamar Chatima Tova.